So this part of the presentation leads us to deep dive into the comprehensive module. So as already described in the previous part of the presentation, the comprehensive module is to be used on top of the basic module to fulfill ESG data requests from the business counterparts on top of what already disclosed with the basic. Another principle important to stress the fact that the undertaking may also decide to report on top of the basic module only a limited number of the disclosure in the comprehensive module on the basis of the request it receives from the business counterparts. The full comprehensive module is composed by 9 disclosures, and you can see in the table that it's structured according to the title of the disclosure, the content, but also the recurrence in current questionnaire that EFRAG has analyzed to come and to design and to come to the finalization that have been finally substantially supported also in the result of the public consultation, and also in the last column the indication of whether this disclosure is and always to be reported, and if applicable, or MA disclosure. So starting with C1, strategy, business model, and sustainability related initiatives, we have that the paragraph explained that the undertaking shall disclose the key elements of its business model and strategy, including the description of significant groups, significant markets the undertaking operates in, and the description of the main business relationship. Those are always to be reported on. Then the undertaking shall disclose the key elements of its business model and strategy, including if the strategy has key elements that relate or affect the sustainability issue, with a brief description of those elements. This is only, and if applicable, only to be reported if the strategy includes those key elements. The C2 description of practice, policies, and future initiatives for transition into a more sustainable economy is also, if applicable, if the undertaking has put in place specific practices, policies, or future initiatives for transition into a more sustainable economy, which it has already reported under the B2 in the basic module. It shall briefly describe them using the template table, so a guided semi-narrative disclosure that is found in the guidance. Also, the undertaking may indicate if the most senior level of the undertaking is accountable for implementing them. Coming to the environmental part of the disclosure, we start in the VSME with the consideration on when reporting on GHG emissions under B3, including the scope 3 GHG emissions that are an expansion of the B3 in the basic model. The text explains that depending on the type of activities carried out by the undertaking, disclosing a quantification of scope 3 GHG emission can be appropriate. And this is in line with the paragraph on the additional disclosure not included in the SME. And this is also appropriate to yield relevant information on the undertaking's value chain impact on climate change. There is then a description of the scope 3 and also an indication of the sectors that can be affected. For example, activities that are upstream of the undertaking operations, purchase good, purchase capital good, transportation is purchase good, or downstream. And in the guidance, there is more indication about relevant sector for this purpose. The next environmental disclosure is C3, GHG reduction targets and climate transition. The content is as follows. If the undertaking has established the GHG emission reduction targets, it shall disclose its targets in absolute values for Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. And depending on the nature of the activities, the undertaking shall also provide targets for significant Scope 3 emissions, of course, in case those are already disclosed in line with the paragraph above. The undertaking shall provide the target year and the target year value, the base year and the base year value, the units used for the targets, the share of Scope 2, Scope 2, Scope 1, Scope 2, and if disclosed, the Scope 3 that the target concerns. And the list of main actions it seeks to implement to achieve this target. If the undertaking that operates in high climate impact sectors has adopted a transition plan for climate change mitigation, it may provide information about it, including an explanation of how it contributes to reduce GHG emissions. In case the undertaking operates in high climate impact sectors and does not have a transition plan for climate change mitigation in place, it shall indicate whether and if so, when it will adopt such a transition plan. Here again, we have a number of, if applicable, disclosure. To be reported only in case the undertaking has already established the reduction targets and or transition plans, and also there is a circumstance trigger related to the high climate impact sectors, and a May disclosure for providing additional information about those transition plan for climate change mitigation. C4 on climate risk states that if the undertaking has identified climate-related hazard and climate-related transition events, creating climate-related risk for the undertaking, it shall briefly describe such climate-related hazards and climate-related transition events, disclose how it has assessed the exposure and sensitivity of its assets, activities, and value chain to these hazards and transition events, and disclose the time horizon of any climate-related hazard and transition events identified, and disclose whether it has undertaken climate change adaptation actions for any climate-related hazards and transition events. This is an, if applicable, disclosure, so to be reported only if the undertaking has identified those climate-related hazards and climate-related transition events. It's quite a recurring request from current questionnaires available in the market, widely confirmed as well in the public consultation. There is a guidance, a simplified guidance to help and support SME to report on this specific part of the disclosure, as well as the next part, which is a May disclosure. The undertaking may disclose the potential adverse effects of climate risks that may affect its financial performance or business operations in the short, medium, or long term, indicating whether it assesses the risk to be high, medium, or low. Then we will move to the social disclosures in the comprehensive module. C5, the additional workforce characteristics. If the undertaking employs 50 or more employees, it may disclose the female to male ratio at management level for the reporting period. And again, if the undertaking employs 50 or more employees, it may disclose the number of those self-employed without personnel who are working exclusively for the undertaking, and temporary workers provided by undertakings primarily engaged in employment activities. This is to be reported by the undertaking when above the threshold, so it's also a circumstance of applicability, and it is a May disclosure at the same time. C6, additional own workforce metric about human rights policy and process. The undertaking shall answer the following question. Does the undertaking have a code of conduct or human rights policy for its own workforce? If yes, does it cover child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, discrimination, accident prevention, or other? And then specification. While the first part of the disclosure is a yes or no, no is to be reported on. The second part, it's inapplicable, meaning if there is, through a yes or no, what are the elements which are present in the policy. Finally, there is the question on, does the undertaking have a complaint handling mechanism for its in workforce? Yes and no, which is so always to be reported on. This was extremely simplified following the public consultation, and it has been widely supported as a needed information on the user side. C7 on severe negative human rights incidents. The undertaking shall disclose an answer to the following questions. Does the undertaking have confirmed incidents in its workforce related to child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, discrimination, or other, with a request to specify? So it has always to be reported according to the scroll down menu offered. So a guided disclosure, again, very much simplified in the public consultation, confirmed as needed by users. A second part of the disclosure states that if yes, the undertaking may describe the actions being taken to address the incidents described above. And finally, the question is the undertaking aware of any confirmed incidents involving workers in the value chain, affected community, consumers, and end user? And if yes, to specify. This part of the disclosure is under, if applicable, principle. In particular, the undertaking describes the actions only when such actions have been taken, or if the confirmed accidents have been confirmed. And same is for the last part of the disclosure. We move to the governance part of the comprehensive module with C8, the revenues from certain sectors and exclusion from EU reference benchmarks. If the undertaking is active in one or more of the following sectors, it shall disclose its related revenues in the sectors. The sectors are the following: the controversial weapons, cultivation of production of tobacco, fossil fuel sector, or chemical production, with some specifications, as you can read in the slide, and more can be read in the guidance. This is an, if applicable, a disclosure, because the undertaking has to disclose only if active in those sectors. And then the undertaking shall also disclose whether it is excluded from any EU reference benchmark that are aligned with the Paris Agreement, and there is the list of those excluded sector. It is always to be reported on. Finally, C9 on gender diversity ratio and governance body. If the undertaking has a governance body in place, the undertaking shall disclose the related gender diversity ratio. This is also an applicable disclosure, triggered by the fact that the undertaking has a governance body in place. It has been object of several discussions, and finally, because of the user element and the confirmed need for this disclosure by the user, being them banks or the larger companies in the supply chain, there was a confirmation also in the public consultation of that. The disclosure has been included in the final VSME. With that, I conclude the description of the comprehensive module. Thanks for the attention. An important aspect of the VSME success as a voluntary standard and for market uptake and market acceptance is the creation of a future work on SME ecosystem. The elements of the VSME ecosystem have stemmed from the public consultation, where a clear message, both from the user and preparers, was on the need to develop online platform tools, additional guidance, educational support material, and also create a forum for exchanging and promoting the VSME to ensure endorsement, market acceptance, and to ensure that current questionnaires and uncoordinated data requests are abandoned. For this reason, EFRAG will intend to put in place after the VSME is after the delivery of VSME to the European Commission, this ecosystem composed on the following 5 elements. An SME forum where SMEs and as preparers, users, and other stakeholders can exchange information, promote initiatives, promote existing tools and platforms, and promote translation of material, support material for the uptake and for fostering the VSME implementation. There is a link, of course, with the current work of the SME community that has accompanied the designing of the VSME in the past 2 years. Second element is the mapping of SME, VSME based initiative, including national initiative on SME sustainability reporting, what are the relevant stakeholders on the ground, also as well the digital aspect, digital platform and tools, and public events organized to raise awareness about the map. Third element is the outreach events and training session, where EFRAG would intend to organize quarterly outreach events, possibly also in different countries, to raise awareness about VSME, ensure development of all the community, the banking, the preparers, the large corporates, heads of value chains, so that the SME standard, VSME standard is promoted, and also the supporting guides are promoted and facilitate the VSME acceptance. On the survey on VSME acceptance, this is the fourth element of the VSME ecosystem. And here we have, we're planning to run a regular online survey, of course, particularly important in the first year of implementation, to test and measure the acceptance with the help of national standard setters and rural authorities. Finally, the VSME supporting guides would be another key component to support to provide support material to SMEs based on a list of topics that emerged already during the VSME ED public consultation, and also possibly accompany this also with educational material and further communication. Finally, we would like to invite you to read and to pay attention to the package that is delivered to the European Commission with the technical advice for the VSME. So we would like to invite you to read carefully the different part of the VSME package, which is delivered to the European Commission. Of course, the cover letter where we explain the main objective, but also recall the main changes and what are the ambitions of the standard, and also how it can be accompanied by important measures to be taken both at member states and at European Commission level. Of course, the text of the VSME standard and its guidance. Important part of this package are the basis for conclusions, where we explain all the different elements that are pertaining to the design of each and every disclosure, the discussions that have taken place, the decisions, and how the results of the public consultation have been taken on board. And of course, the cost-benefit analysis that explains what are the main costs, the main benefits, and confirms the benefits that will be achieved globally by the VSME. And finally, important part of this package are also the annexes of the basis for conclusion, in particular the key findings of the public consultation and the field tests that have led to the finalization of the VSME standard, including also the summary of the past consultation workshops with banking and SME association, confirming some of the important changes that have been brought forward in the final VSME. Thank you very much for the attention.